Doctor of Chiropractic at the Rock Health and Wellness Center, and this is Life with Jason Clemmons, DC. This is Tuesday, November 21st, getting ready for Thanksgiving, about to have some turkey and all that good, healthy stuff that we've decided that we're going to have this week. And man, it's been busy. Everybody's busy this week. We're all out there running around trying to get things done. The kids are out of school for the week, and everybody's trying to get all their shopping done and all the places they got to get to and get in the car and go see grandma and grandpa and all the places that we're going. It's a busy week out there. And I hope everybody is safe. I hope everybody remembers what this thing's all about. I hope you don't forget to be thankful sometime this week. We'll get into that a little bit later on in the week, I think. But yeah, it's fantastic. It was a great day. It's a super busy day. Yesterday was a super busy day, and um, I hope you guys out there are being safe. I hope you had a great day today. I hope you got all your turkey ready and all that stuff, and know what's going on. So, or you can just have enchiladas. That's another thing. That's what I heard today. That sometimes you just mix it up if you want to. Throw them a curveball and just have enchiladas. And or if you normally have enchiladas, you can throw them a curveball and um, have turkey. Yeah, whatever. It doesn't really matter. Enchiladas wouldn't necessarily be on the health and wellness menu. I don't know how you're going to make them. You might could if you practice really hard. You could figure out a way to make them in a way that control your insulin. Probably. If you, I don't know what I bet you could. I bet you if you worked at it, you could. But we're not going to work at it that hard this week at my house because I'm pretty sure we're going to have some turkey and some ham and a sweet potato and probably some green beans. That's what I'm going with this week and for this Thanksgiving. So, anyway, hey, last night's show was pretty good. We got into we're following the model of our church services on Sunday, and we've been going through this idea about temptation, which is a great time of year to do that, right? All the temptation that we're about to face, and how do we overcome that temptation, and how do we persevere through it, and how do we make it through on the other side? And that's what we've been talking about, and we've taken some of those lessons that I've learned on Sunday at church and just brought them into the health and wellness model on Monday nights. And so last night we were in Romans 7, and we were breaking down that very confusing. I do what I don't want to do, and then I don't want to do what I know I'm supposed to do, and even though I don't do it, I still think it's right. And that whole passage in Romans 7:15, starting in 15, and it gets a little bit confusing when we're trying to break all that down right there. So um, I think we did it a little bit of justice. I had conversations today about it. That one of my sweet little ladies that comes in, she walks on our Ultra G treadmill, and she takes notes of the show. She listens to it on the radio. She takes notes of the show, and then she comes in and we discuss some of the notes and some of the things that she listens to. And if she's listening tonight, I hope you're doing great. I hope you had a fantastic day. You did a good job today on the treadmill, um, and so we'll try to make this one fun for you tonight too. But it was really cool, some of the things that she said, and she was remembering them, and she had them written down about what we had talked about last night. And so I thought that was awesome. I thought it was awesome that she takes notes of the show. I thought it was awesome that she shares those ideas with me, and that we're making an impact in her life. And I'm sure there's lots of others of you out there that are taking some of this stuff and implementing it in your life. So I hope you are. I hope it's making your life better. We've got some testimonials. If you want to go to our Instagram page, the rock.health at Instagram, if we've got some testimonials of some ladies who are doing super good in the nutrition program. One of them said today, the post that we have, is that she's lost almost 30 pounds in her program. And in the world today, there's so many things going on. There's so many people who are taking this weight loss shot thing, and they think that's doing them good, and then they're going to find out that it's not. But there's so many different ways that you can lose weight, and there's so many different ways that you can get healthy, and it's just really cool to see when you just do it right. And these girls that have they reached out and they put their testimonials, given us their testimonials, and and they're just doing it right, and they're both increasing their health, and they're doing fantastic. So shout out to them. I'm glad they're doing great. If you guys want to read about that, you can go to that page and read about it. And if you want to follow us, if you're listening to us on the radio, we're going to get into some pictures tonight, and we're going to try to break down the show is going to be on low back, leg, and foot pain. And we got a request a couple of weeks ago on one of the shows about something I asked. I asked if anybody would like to, if you had something that you wanted to know about, let me know, and I'll put a show together for you and see if we could teach you a little bit about what's going on. And so we had a request. I've got one of my patients that listens to the show. She's got her foot hurts, and she wants to know why. And so I thought we'd take some time to break it down. It's not my favorite subject. Chiropractors and back pain are tied together. What does Forrest Gump say? Like peas and carrots. Yeah, it's not the way chiropractic started. And if you know anything about what we're doing on this show, then it's pretty obvious that we're not back pain people. And here at the Rock Health and Wellness Center, we are wellness people here at the Rock Health and Wellness Center. But sometimes, as part of wellness, you have to be able to deal with some back pain, and you have to be able to explain it. You have to be able to understand it, and so even though it's one of those quickly down under moments, I didn't say I didn't know how to use it. I just said I didn't have much use for it. It's just like taking the Bible and picking out one book of the Bible, and then that's all you want to talk about ever. Right? Like you can't learn anything else from the rest of it. Well, when I look at the nervous system and its infinite wonder, and I look at the creation that we are, when I look at the nervous system, there's so much to your nervous system. There's absolutely so much to the way that your body functions and the way your brain functions and the way everything is happening in that symphony that we talked about a couple of weeks ago. And so I like to try to look at the whole picture of you and not just a piece of you. And especially when you're talking, because everything's related, right? It's all related. So I know I have to discuss low back pain every once in a while, and I have to discuss foot pain, and I'm going to do it from a wellness model tonight, and we'll see how it works out. So if you guys are on the radio and you want to follow along, you can go to the Walk by Faith Facebook page, or you can go to the Rock Health and Wellness Center's Facebook page, or YouTube or Twitter, and find us it's at Health from the Rock on YouTube, or Jason Clemmons DC on X, Twitter. And if you want to, you can go and you can see these, or you can go back anytime and watch them later if you want to. So it might help to see some of the pictures that we're going to go through tonight when we explain it. But I want before we get into that, there's two things. There's an article, but there was something I thought was really funny on Saturday that I'm just going to share with you. And I know that there's some of you out there who are not football fans, and that you don't know anything about football, and you don't follow football, and it's not your thing. And if that's you, that's cool. I get it. But this is a story about balance, and I just really thought it was funny because it's what we talk about all the time on the show, and it's kind of like, so the head football coach. So Texas Tech played University of Central Florida on Saturday right here in Lubbock at Jones Stadium, and it was a really close game. It came down to 1 point. Texas Tech blocked an extra point right at the end of the game, and won 24-23. And the head football coach at the University of Central Florida, his name is Gus Malzahn, and I've studied him for a little bit and watched him throughout his career a little bit, and he's a good football coach. He's been around a long time. He's got really he's an innovator, and he's been around a long time. But he used to be a high school coach before he got into college, and then he worked his way up, and he ended up at the University of Auburn, and he was the head football coach at Auburn. And I think he was there like 5 years. And I think it's right. I don't know. I think this is true that he beat Alabama 3 out of the 5 years when he was at Auburn. And if you if you don't understand what that means, that's a big deal. Like people in the Southeast Conference are fanatical about their football, and the fans are crazy about their football and about their teams, and they're they're really really fanatical. And so Auburn people don't like Alabama people, and Alabama people don't like Auburn people, and they live in the same state. And I and I understand that because there's a lot of Red Raider people that don't necessarily like Texas Longhorn people either. But that's just the way it is. And um, there's Longhorn people that don't like Texas Tech people. I get it. It's fine. But Coach Malzahn is a good coach. He was at Auburn. He ended up getting fired at Auburn, and he ended up taking the job at Central Florida. Well, let me step also ran note here. The University of Arkansas is having a tough year, and their coach has been there for a few years, and they're 4-7 overall, and they're 1-6 in conference, and so they're having a tough year um, at the University of Arkansas. So after the game, after the Texas Tech Central Florida game, I got on Twitter and X and just wanted to know. I just wanted to know like what Coach Malzahn had to say about the game. And a lot of times they'll put the post game press conference. They'll put it on Twitter, and so it was really funny. I just went into my search and I searched Gus Malzahn, and what I got was all the Auburn people and all the Arkansas people. All the Auburn people could say, because Auburn on Saturday got beat by New Mexico State. Now, a lot of people talk trash about that, but I coached at New Mexico State for 3 years, and I've watched those guys get better. We weren't any good when I was there, but I watched them get better over the last 30 years, 20 something years. And they've got a quarterback who's a competitive dude. He's a fun guy to watch, and I really love watching him play. He is a super competitor. And New Mexico State went to Auburn. It's supposed to be one of those easy games for Auburn, and New Mexico State won the game. So the people from Auburn were not happy about their situation and their coach. And they kept saying one after another, just kept saying how much, boy, they'd be better off if they had Gus Malzahn. Boy, sure was nice to have Gus Malzahn. It sure was nice when old Coach Malzahn was here. I wish we could get him back. And then all the people from Arkansas, there was several people from Arkansas that were on X, and they were saying, we could have got Coach Malzahn. I don't know why we're decided to keep our coach. Our coach is horrible. He's 4-7. He's 1-6 in the conference. He's dead last in his division of the SEC. And they were like, I can't believe we kept him. We should get Coach Malzahn. We need Coach Malzahn. And so the Auburn people on Twitter and X were saying, hey, man, I sure wish we had Coach Malzahn. And the Arkansas people were saying, I sure wish we had Coach Malzahn. But the Central Florida people were saying, oh, I wish we would fire Coach Malzahn. Like, I wish we'd get rid of this guy. I hate this guy. I can't stand this guy. His offense is horrible. His mistakes he made in the game, we should have easily beat Texas Tech. Texas Tech is horrible. We should beat those guys easy. I can't believe we lost that game. We should get rid of our coach. Our coach doesn't know what he's talking about. And I just laughed. I thought that was so funny because we have talked on this show multiple times about the balance of life. Remember, half your day sucks and half your day is great. Half the people hate you and half the people love you, and it's all happening simultaneously. Life is balanced. And if you see one half of the magnet, remember when you cut a magnet in half, you get two magnets? It's like you have a positive and a negative end of a magnet, but when you cut it in half, it ends up with two separate magnets that have a positive and a negative and a positive and a negative. And life is that way. Life is balanced. Half your day, if I said to you, how was your day? You'd say, oh, it was great. Or you would say, oh, it was awful. And it's like, it was both. Half your day was awful and half your day was great. It's balanced. You just can't see it. And I thought that was a really, really, it was a really fun example of balance. If you think you're all fabulous and you think you're the greatest thing since sliced bread, just know that there's somebody out there that hates your guts. They can't stand you. They can't stand anything about you, right? And by contrast, if you're down in the dumps and you're having a rough day and you don't think anybody cares about you or anybody even knows you or anybody even recognizes you or any of that stuff, that you're only seeing half the magnet. You're only seeing half the story. There's somebody out there that thinks you're awesome. There's somebody out there that loves you. There's somebody out there that's probably saying something nice about you right now. And that's the way it goes. So when you're in those binds and you think, man, this is horrible. It's like, no, it's only half horrible. Just remember Coach Malzahn. Half the people in Florida hate him, and the people in Auburn love him. It's like the people in Arkansas wish they had him, and the people in Florida wish they'd get rid of him. I just think that's hilarious. It's like it just depends on who you talk to is how you're doing. So anyway, that's just a funny story. I just thought it was funny on Saturday, and you guys, if you're having a sucky day right now, just think there's probably somebody in Arkansas that wishes they had you. They wish. I mean, hey, there's somebody in Alabama that just is like, man, I miss you, right? That's the way it works. It's balanced out there. Just get in the middle, and that's where the love is. That's where the peace is. That's where the calmness is right there in the middle. When you realize that, you know, some things you do fabulous and some things you don't do fabulous. It's such a refreshing feeling to get to that point of life to just realize, you know what, there are some things that I absolutely suck at. Like I'm really horrible at doing them. And there's some things I'm really good at doing. That's what one of my ladies told me this morning. She said, you're kind of unique. I thought that was funny. I thought that was pretty funny she said you're unique in your approach to the way that you teach. And I was like, hey, great. That's, there's, that's just balance of the universe. So anyway, I thought I'd share that story with you. And then one last thing is the article. The article of today is, let me see if I can find it here. Um, it was, I don't know if I've talked about it before, but I'm talking about it again tonight. It's calcium supplementation and risk of dementia in women with cerebrovascular disease. And it's in the Journal of Neurology, October 18th, 2016, volume 87. So this article has 40 references. The study includes 700 Swedish women aged 70 to 92 years, followed for 5 years. The average recommended dose of calcium supplement in Sweden is 1,000 milligrams daily. And it gets into this idea that dementia and osteoporosis are leading causes of disability in the elderly. Because calcium deficiency contributes to osteoporosis, daily dietary calcium intake of 1,000 to 1,200 milligrams is recommended. Such a large calcium intake through diet alone can be difficult. Therefore, calcium supplements are widely used. Now, this is a quotation from the article, the key point of the article. Now, I don't necessarily think that's a true statement because calcium deficiency contributes to osteoporosis. Okay, it might contribute to it if you're just super deficient or if you're not absorbing it properly or you don't have enough vitamin D to help you absorb it properly. But there, calcium, I think osteoporosis is a hole in the bucket problem, not enough in the top. So the objective of the study was to determine whether calcium supplementation is associated with the development of dementia in women after a 5-year follow-up. Calcium supplementation may increase the risk of developing dementia in elderly women. Women treated with calcium supplements had a higher risk of developing dementia, increased relative risk by 110%, and the subtype dementia with stroke increased by 340% than the women who did not take calcium supplementation. we found a relationship between calcium supplementation and increased risk for dementia in elderly women in this 5-year follow up study. The frequency of fractures was 40.8% in the group that received calcium supplements and 20.8 in the group that did not. Crazy, fewer fractures in women not taking calcium supplements by half. Calcium supplements might have a direct toxic effect on vulnerable neurons because the increased calcium levels may amplify ischemic cell death and worsen the outcome after cerebrovascular events. So, you know, sometimes we just take things, we just take them because it's some marketing scheme told us that we're supposed to take them, and we're just all of a sudden we're just like, man, we just better take our calcium because that's just what they said we're supposed to do. And it's like, who said that? And it's just like drinking milk, like the same idea. The Harvard nurses study with 77,000 nurses found that the ones that drank milk had higher levels of osteoporosis. That's what I'm saying. It's not a calcium deficiency problem as much as it's a hole in the bucket problem. And one of the things that we do here, and I'm so thankful that we do it. I'm so thankful that my career has has finally gotten to the point to where I understand this concept of starting with the brain. It's like we should start when we take a supplement, we should start with the idea of what's it doing to my brain, not what it's doing to my body. Listen to this statement right here. Calcium supplementation might have a direct toxic effect on vulnerable neurons because the increased calcium levels may amplify ischemic cell death and worsen the outcomes after cerebrovascular event. There is a steep increase in serum calcium levels in your blood caused by calcium supplements. Neurons are especially vulnerable to the excitatory and exotoxic effects of the calcium level peaks caused by the supplementation. Calcium plays a central role in the mechanism of cell death. Too much calcium, too much calcium might be bad for us. I'll just put it that way. That might not be the thing that we should be taking right there. So that just I try to share this stuff with you. This is straight out of the Journal of Neurology. Okay, October 18th, 2016, volume 87, pages 1674 through 1680. Calcium supplementation and risk of dementia. So you don't want to damage your nerve cells. You don't want to create a hyperactive nerve cell and make that cell bust or cause some sort of damage to that cell because of the super activity that cell is having to deal with and that toxic effect of calcium. What you ought to do is, or what you may consider to do, I'm not saying you ought to do it, you might consider about what you're doing to keep your body's pH level proper and some of the things that you're doing from that standpoint. And then that's what you do. So you don't have to buffer it. You don't have to buffer your blood. If your pH gets too acidic, one of the things your body's going to do is it's going to pull calcium from the bone in order to make that make it balance. And that's where milk is an animal protein basically, and it increases acidity. And so that's where green leafy vegetables comes in, and that's where vitamin K comes in. When we had that, one of my patients asked me about that today. What is the deal with vitamin K? And what vitamin D, when you're taking vitamin D and high levels of vitamin D, one of the things that vitamin D does for us is it helps us absorb calcium in our gut. And so that vitamin D is going to help we get your calcium from your food, like your broccoli, like your spinach leaves, like those sort of things that have calcium in them, and you'll absorb them. And that's why it's always a wonder, why does there vitamin K? That's where you get vitamin K, is through green leafy vegetables. How is that? Like there's some sort of random chance right there, right? There's some sort of random chance that your green leafy vegetables are full of vitamin K and calcium, so that when you're eating them, you're actually the vitamin K helps you direct the calcium into where it needs to go. And so you want that calcium to go in the proper places. And so if you're taking a bunch of vitamin D and you're taking a bunch of calcium supplements, you might be overloading your brain with too much calcium. and you might consider making sure that you have enough magnesium. Um, Magnesium blocks the calcium entry into the neuron and as much is neuroprotective. Higher levels of calcium through supplementation and low levels of magnesium render neurons vulnerable to excitotoxic injury, death, and dementia. Higher levels of calcium through supplementation and lower levels of magnesium can cause a dementia problem right there. So that's just something that you might consider. Magnesium is something that I make a recommendation to every patient that comes into the office. I make a recommendation as far as supplements goes that they take their fish oil and they take their magnesium. I put that on pretty much every single person's um, recommend plan that the treatment plan that I make for them after we go through their exam and everything because I think that's so important that magnesium is way more important to me than calcium supplementation and I'll just present that for your consideration and you can do with it what you would like. When we get back from the break, we are going to talk about low back pain, leg pain, and foot pain and how it all fits together. So you guys stay with us. This is Jason Clemmons at Life with Jason Clemmons DC on 98.7 Walk by Faith. We'll be right back. Yeah, the brain's excitatory neurotransmitter, glutamate and aspartate, attach to neurons M- NMDA receptor. Calcium enters the neuron, enhancing free radical production and neuronal excitotoxicity, potentially causing neuronal sickness and death. So that's that's kind of the end of the article right there. That that if there's too much calcium, that we could cause cell death. Um, if you guys, I'm gonna when we get back from the break on the radio, what we're going to talk about is some foot pain. That was one of the listeners requested that we talk about foot pain at some point, and so I put a few slides together, and I just want to talk about how that works. But if you have something that you would like to talk about and you would like to have a show about, well, let me know, and I'll put a show together for you, and we can talk about it. And it can be pretty much about anything. I mean, obviously, I could tie it all back to health in some form or fashion. So if there's something you'd like to, just you can send me a text at 806-794-0400, or you can um, send us a message on Facebook or whatever about what's happening out there and what you'd like to talk about. And then I'll put a show together and we can talk about it. So that's something, or you could just send me something that if you just want to send a message or a comment about the show, anything, feel free to do that, and we'll answer all your questions. We got just a minute here left or so before we get back on from the radio, and so I'm just going to let that run. And before we get into the low back stuff, that it's really funny when people come in, and I hope after we get through with this show tonight, you'll have a little bit better feeling about what's going on because it's um, the biggest thing is the unknown. You're not really sure if you're really hurt or why you're hurt or how to get it to stop. That's really the thing that most of us are interested in is how do I get this to stop? Because when you have back pain and leg pain and foot pain, one of the things that it does that's so disruptive is it messes up your sleep. And so you'll end up not getting enough rest, and then that carries over into the next day, and then that makes it all worse. And and so when we carry that over into the next day, and then that, and I'm going to talk about that because how is pain perceived, and it's in your brain, and and that when it's you can really mess it up and get your brain exhausted, and then it makes your pain worse. Okay, everybody, we're back. This is Life with Jason Clemmons, DC. This is Tuesday, November 21st. And you're listening to us on 98.7 Walk by Faith Radio or 1420 AM Lubbock Christian Nation. So the topic of tonight's show is low back to leg to foot pain. And so I got a request a few weeks ago about the show, and would we do that show? And so I just thought I would take it on tonight and see if we could make a little bit of sense about what exactly is going on with it. So um, the first thing that I want to talk about is the definition of pain. Like like what is that, and how does that work? And and the thing that I think is so important as far as that goes is that even though your foot hurts, pain is, I mean, it's so complicated. There's, if you go Google how all the different types of definitions of pain, you're going to find multiple definitions right there, and some of them aren't going to make any sense at all. But it says pain is an unpleasant signal that something hurts. Well, that's great. That's pretty complicated right there. It's a complex signal that differs greatly from person to person. Sensations of pain sent to the brain through specialized receptors called nociceptors. So you can imagine that you have, and I've made this analogy before, your thermostat that's on your wall. Just, the thermostat, you set the thermostat, and the thermostat is detecting the heat or the cold, the temperature that's around the thermostat, right? And wherever that is in whatever room that's in, it's detecting that, and then that it's setting whether or not it kicks the heater on or kicks the air conditioner on or whatever, based on that, what the feeling that it's getting from around it. And so just imagine that your entire house, wherever you are right now, if your entire house is covered from top to bottom, on the floor, on the ceiling, with thermostats. And make those thermostats, instead of making a big thermostat, make that thermostat come down and be really, really small. I mean, let's make that dude about the size of your fingernail. So let's just imagine that you had thermostats the size of your fingernail all over your entire wall and ceiling and floor and all the walls of your room. And they were all detecting the heat or the cold that was in that area right there. And every one of those thermostats was wired to your brain. That's what receptors are. Receptors are little bitty thermostats, kind of. They have different types of receptors. Some of them detect sharp and dull. Some of them detect vibration. Some of them are hot and cold. But each one of those are little receptors that you have. Just imagine fingernails all over your entire wall, right? And imagine that they're connected to your brain. And now go over and hold a candle next to one of those receptors, and you heat up the air that's around that receptor, and all of a sudden that receptor fires up into the brain, just like a thermostat would fire. And if you had a little thermostat, you took a candle and put it next to the thermostat, you're going to make the thermostat hot, the air around the thermostat hot, and it's going to kick on and it's going to kick your air conditioner on, right? Well, that's what happens with those little receptors. And the pain receptors are called nociceptors. And the nociceptors is what your body uses to communicate with your brain what's going on. And we're talking about foot pain. Okay? So I'm specifically talking about foot pain. So the foot pain is, so just imagine that they have these little receptors like in the skin of your foot, and you've got a whole part of your nervous system that is feeding your brain. And the reason I want to say this is because it's really important to understand that pain is a perception in your brain. Pain is not felt in your foot. Pain is received in your brain. And the way your brain is functioning is going to help determine whether or not you have more pain or less pain. It's like when I played football and you just get tackled, man, you didn't even feel it. It was just like you just got up. It wasn't any big deal. But now, if they tackle me like that, I'd cry like a baby. I'd be like, dang, that freaking hurts. I don't want to do that, right? My brain has changed the way that it perceives the pain that I would have now. Heck, if I run into this table, then all of a sudden it'll hurt, and I won't. I'll just feel all fussy. So you have little receptors, and the receptors are feeding into the spinal cord through the dorsal root of the spinal cord, which means through the backside of the spinal cord. And these receptors in this picture right here, but you've got receptors from the skin that are feeding into following the nerve and feeding into the spinal cord, and they're going up into your brain. Now, when you have a reflex, you can see in this picture right here that a reflex actually causes it is at the spinal cord level. You ever wondered when you hit your knee with the reflex hammer, what exactly is happening? Well, you stretch that ligament, you hit that ligament, and you activate that afferent input, which is the input nerve going into the spinal cord. And then it will send a signal up to the brain, but it will also send a signal straight across that will come out of the front of the spinal cord, and it will go to the muscle and make your leg contract. It will make that muscle contract. So when you hit somebody on their knee, right below their kneecap on that patella tendon, and all of a sudden you check that reflex right there, their leg will kick out straight because the input went into the spinal cord, in the back of the spinal cord, and it went around. Before it got to the brain, it got back to the muscle, and it got the muscle to flex, and now your foot kicked forward. Now, the reason that your foot doesn't keep kicking forward is because you get a signal from your brain that comes back down through there and turns that off. And that's why when you hit someone, some people, you hit them and their foot just keeps bouncing. And that's bad because they're not getting that signal to the brain. So when we're talking about pain and we're talking about foot pain, first I wanted to make sure that we understand that we're talking about brain. We're not talking about foot. We're talking about brain. Now, there's some signal that's coming from the foot that's telling the brain that there's something wrong, and that signal may be really intense, and the brain may understand that to be painful. Like I'm not saying that that's not true. But it is one of those things that is your brain, you're perceiving the way it gets complicated, but your brain tells you exactly how much pain you're in, and the status of your brain is super important. So this is kind of what it looks like at the spinal cord level. You have the information that's coming in. This, let's just pretend right here is your foot, and the skin on that, or any type of part of your foot. And there's different ways of looking at it, but that's going to come into the spinal cord, and then it's going to go up to the brain, and then the brain's going to make a decision on what to do, and then send a signal back down the spinal cord, and it's going to go to the muscle. So we've got that whole come in pathway and go out pathway. Look at the picture right here, because the going out pathway doesn't have any sensory information. You don't have pain that goes from your brain to your foot. You have brain. You have. I mean, for this show, we're going to say that where the pain sensation comes from is from the foot to the brain. It's coming into the brain is the sensory part, and it's motor output that's going back down to tell you to try to do something about it. Okay, so that's one thing as far as that goes. So when you have, well, no, let me move back one. What there, just to look at the actual lumbar spine. So let's look at the lumbar spine for just a second. So when we look at the lumbar spine, and we've got pictures right here, we have a vertebrae, and then we have a disc that's between the two. Let me see what this looks like. Yeah, that'd be good. Yeah, we have a vertebrae, and then we have a disc, and we have a nerve root that's coming out right here. And then we also, off of that nerve root, we have nerves that are coming back to the back part of the vertebrae called the facet. And when we're dealing with someone who's having low back pain, one of the things that I do in my office is I have to try to figure out, are we talking about disc problems or are we talking about facet problems? Because those two things are different. A disc problem can be very complicated. There's a jelly in the middle of that disc. And I often think about this as like the Little Debbie snack cakes with the oatmeal cookie and the cream filling, right? Like that's an oatmeal cookie and that's an oatmeal cookie and that's the cream filling that's in between them. And if you smash the two oatmeal cookies together, that cream filling's got to go somewhere. Well, if you smash those two vertebrae together, that disc has got to go somewhere. In the middle of that disc is that nucleus that's kind of a jelly filled type. It's kind of a fluid jelly type stuff that's in the middle of that nucleus. And so it pushes down and fluid doesn't compress. So whenever you push down on that disc is going to bulge. Now, if that disc bulge and it hits that nerve right there, you're going to get distribution of pain of wherever that nerve is going. Okay? And there's a couple of different ways that we could look at that, but one of the things that we can look at is what's called a dermatome. And the dermatome is it's the area of your skin that relies on nerves that connect to your spinal cord. So the dermatome is the way that it gives us a little bit of information about how to look at whether or not you've got a disc problem or you have a facet problem. That's the way I determine it. And I always try to check out those two things. The dermatome is each level of your spinal cord, the nerve root that leaves that level is going to supply a certain part of your body. So you can kind of see here to where, let's go down here to the lumbar spine. This L1 dermatome that comes around, it's at the top of the groin right there. L2 kind of comes down to the bottom part of the groin and the upper part of the inner thigh. And then L3, when it comes off of the spine right there, it's going to come right down there across over your knee. So when I have a patient that comes in and says, "Doc, man, my back hurts and it's running down my leg and it's coming right here over the top of my knee." And it's like, "Oh, this is killing me right here at my knee." Well, that immediately makes my brain think, hey, what we're working with right here is a disc. We better rule out a disc. Because if that disc smashes, if you take that Little Debbie snack cake and you smash it really hard, I often think of it as a jelly donut. Because back in my old days, I used to eat all that stuff, right? But a jelly donut if you had a jelly donut sitting on a countertop and all of a sudden you just smash that jelly donut, you'd push that filling, that jelly out of that donut, right? If that happens in the spinal, in the disc, that's most likely going to be surgery. Now, it will heal itself and it will solve itself, but you might be on the floor for 3 or 4 or 5 months, and most people don't want to do that. So if you were stranded on an island somewhere and you blew a disc, you could get by with it. It would hurt for a while, but you'd get by with it. But most people want that to get fixed rather quickly. So they would go do that. So when a person comes in and says, "I'm having pain that's down my leg somewhere," or now let's follow it down. L4 is going to come down the outside of the thigh, but really where we start to feel it is below that knee on the inside of your leg. So if you just run your hand down the inside of your leg below your knee, that's usually where L4 kind of runs down through there right there. And then L5 kind of hits that the outer calf, the front outer side of your shin below the knee, and then it comes down into the foot, and then S1 gets down there into the bottom, the outside of the foot into your little toe. And you can kind of see where that nerve supply goes down here. This is a picture of it from the back. So you can see these same things right here. So L1 is your lumbar spine. That's the lower back. And you have each one of those levels right there is where you're going to get some of that pain that comes down the leg. Now, when you get into the sciatic part of it, you'll notice is that's where it comes down the back of the leg. And that's where you start to see, that's when it comes down the back of the leg, in my experience, it's most always either sciatic nerve or facets. It's the facets are not going to come around to the front part of the leg. They're not going to come around to the thigh. They're not going to come around down to the lower shin or the inside or the outside. And that you've got to get down below where you have a disc. Let me see if I've got a picture of that, because it makes a little bit more sense if you can kind of see it and say, okay, like, all right, the last disc that you have is between L5 and your sacrum. That's your L5 disc, and it's up here. Your sacrum is a big triangular bone that is in the lumbar spine. It's under the lumbar spine. It's your tailbone. That down here at the bottom is the coccyx, and this is the sacrum. This is half of it right here. And what you can see is these are nerve roots that are coming off up here, and the nerve roots that they come together to make the sciatic nerve that runs down the back of the leg. So some of them will contribute branches that end up, when it comes off of that nerve right there, at the root, right next to the spinal cord, they will put together branches. So L4, L5, and then your S1, S2, S3, that's your sciatic nerve. Those branches right there come together to make this very thick, strong, it's about as big around as your little finger, this nerve that comes down and runs down the back of your leg. And it's usually where you get radiating pain runs down the back of your leg. When it's running down the back of your leg or right into your glutes, the top of your buttocks, and it's staying in the back, it's most of the time, in my experience, not a disc. It's either your sciatic nerve or you're getting more into those facets. Facets, when you jam them, if you just lean back, you'll jam your facets. You'll get kind of a bilateral backache right across the belt line that if it's going to radiate, it stays down the back of your leg. That's a way better scenario, really. And a lot of times what happens, you can see this big ilium, that's your hip bone, and then your sacrum right here, and your sacrum there's an SI joint. That's your SI joint right there. Sacroiliac and there's a ligament that's over the top of all that. And then you can see this is your piriformis muscle right here. And you may have heard of that before, but the piriformis muscle, that SI joint, that sciatic nerve runs underneath that piriformis right there. And one of the jobs of the piriformis is to externally rotate your foot. So if you feel like your foot's turning out because that piriformis is getting tighter and tighter, then that piriformis tightening down, sometimes it will actually clamp down on that sciatic nerve and it'll run down the back of your leg. There's a certain percentage of the population, I can't bring it off the top of my head, but there's a certain percentage of the population whose sciatic nerve actually runs through the middle of the piriformis muscle. And so it will come through there and run right through the middle of that muscle. And now what you'll get, if that muscle tightens, it will smash that nerve and you'll get that pain that runs down the back of your leg. And that's sciatica. So if sciatica that word gets used a lot because people will just say, oh man, they'll have pain. They'll be pointing to the front of their leg and they'll be like, no, I think my sciatica is messing up. And it's like, no, that's not your sciatica if it's coming around to the front. If that dermatome is coming around to the front, it's not your sciatica. And so the concept there is how is that coming all the way down to my foot? Now I see what I've got here is I've got nerves that are coming off my lumbar spine. I've got nerves that are coming from my sacrum, and those nerves are all coming together to run all the way down to my foot. So they're going to come down, they're going to wrap around my knee, they're going to come down to the calf on the front side, and they're going to come all the way across to the foot and out here to the outside of the foot. And on the back side, they'll run down the back of the leg, and then they get back behind the knee, and then they kind of split in half below the knee. And one of them goes to the inside, and one of them goes to the outside. And so somewhere along the way, you've got some sort of compression that's going along there. Now, you've whenever you're having distal pain, meaning way down away from your torso, you've got to differentiate if it's coming where it's happening. And anywhere along the pathway, you can entrap the nerve and cause pain. You can have a neuroma in your foot. That just means a swelling of the nerve in your foot. And a lot of times that'll happen like right between your toes, the bones of your toes in your foot. Like that'll nerve will get swollen right there, and that's extremely painful to have a neuroma. That so you can have pain in your foot and have perfectly fine lumbar spine. You don't have those two things are not necessarily. It doesn't mean your lumbar spine is bad or something's subluxated or something's disrupted in your lumbar spine. If you have pain in your foot, you can have something. You can have a nail in your foot that doesn't have anything to do with your lumbar spine. But you have to when we're troubleshooting that and we're trying to see exactly what's causing that pain. That's where we have to kind of go through each step along the way. We kind of have to look at the foot. We kind of have to look at the knee. We kind of have to look at the hip. And then we have to look at the lumbar spine. And then we have to look at how is that integrating into the brain, right? The pathway. What is the pathway that's going all the way up? Because it goes all the way up from your foot into that nerve root and into the dorsal horn of that nerve root. And then it's going to come up there and it's going to go up into your brain. And then it's going to feed in your brain to some place right there, right? And it's usually going to cross over somewhere along the way, and it's going to feed into the sensory part of your brain. The cortex, the sensory cortex that's in the brain is going to detect what's going on in the foot. And that's why it gets a little complicated, because it goes all the way from top to bottom. It can go all the way from top to bottom. So you can have bones in the foot that are out of place. You can have that are creating some sort of pressure on the nerve or swelling on the nerve. You can have muscles in the foot that aren't functioning properly for whatever reason. You can have pain in the knee. You can have pain in the hip. And you can also have, what is super important is when we look at what the lumbar spine and what is the status of the health of the lumbar spine, right? So this picture here, this is a normal lumbar spine, and this is a lumbar spine that's degenerative and it's not aligned properly, and it's got bone spurs that are going on in there, and like this side over here is the left, this side over here is the right. So you can have a like you can just imagine now that the nerve supply that's coming off of those nerve roots, because that whole lumbar spine is so jagged and messed up and crooked and degenerative and bone spurred, that there could be disruption in that somewhere along the way that's putting pressure on the nerve, and it's just making it hot as it goes down. It's not sending the pain from the lumbar spine to the foot. What's happening is the nerve is getting irritated at the lumbar spine, and then it just keeps getting irritated all the way down, just like it gets hot and inflamed all the way down into the foot. And so that's really what we're dealing with right there. Whenever when that's something that could be causing it. So you can have facet problems, or you could be having disc problems, or you can be having some sort of problem at the nerve root because of the alignment that's going on right there. And that's a whole, a whole nother problem that goes on. So I hope that helped a little bit to try to explain kind of how all that stuff fit together. And I know that sometimes it's a little bit complicated, but all of those things go together. And I'm going to finish just a little bit for you guys that are on Facebook. Hang with me. This is the end of the show. And I just want to tell everybody, I hope you have a great night. I hope you have a great day. And we'll see you guys again tomorrow with Life with Jason Clemmons, DC at 6 p.m. Tomorrow night. So you guys have a great night. Okay. Yeah. So from the what's happening right here, like this disruption that's happening at the lumbar spine, you can just imagine what that looks like right there, right? I mean, it's there with the spurs that's going on and the decreased disc height and the crookedness of that spine. There has to be some sort of disruption along the way of what's happening at the spinal cord level in each one of these nerve roots. So because there's so much degeneration that's going on in the lumbar spine, it would cause pain onto that nerve root, and then that nerve root can run down the leg, down into the foot, and you can start having issues with the nerve that goes into the foot, and it makes it super complicated. Sometimes it's hard to fix. Sometimes when that lumbar spine is so bad, it's hard to fix. So one of the things that you can do is try to get your brain to be as efficient as possible. Try to have your brain functioning as well as possible. Try to make sure that you're not inflamed. You can control your inflammation, and that's why your diet becomes so important. And then you can kind of modulate all of the problems that you have there by just dealing with just the problem and not the problem at the lumbar spine plus all the other problems that's going along with it. Like if you can just have one problem and not one problem plus two problems plus three problems plus four problems, because that becomes overwhelming for the brain. So that's one way that you can control your pain a little bit that when it's coming down there into your foot. So I hope that was helpful. Um, I'm sure if you're watching this show, you'll let me know about it, and then we could talk about it sometime when you get to the office. But maybe that was a little bit of a visual that gives you a little bit more information about from brain through your lumbar spine, through your hip, down to your knee, down to your foot, and explains how that works. So you guys have a great night. I will see you guys again tomorrow night at 6. Holler if you need anything.